Enough with their meaningless, virtue-signaling, extreme climate policies that only serve to make Canadians poorer, threaten our energy security, kill jobs and investment across the country, and make us vulnerable to unpredictable trade winds.
According to legacy media and the Liberals, Mark Carney should win this election because he is the one to deal with Donald Trump. That's what he has said. That's what they're claiming at the very least. But Michael Barrett brought up a pretty darn good point earlier today, which is, how exactly is that actually going, though? Pierre Poilievre made an announcement that was nothing short of epic, and he is exactly right. It is time for Canada to have an accountable government for a change. I'm Jasmine Lane. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and leave your comments down below where we will continue the conversation there. Poilievre also addressed pro-Palestine marches in a way unlike any other leader, actually. And we have some bombshells dropped on the Liberal Party by Premier Danielle Smith and also the CBC. All that and more is coming up today on Over Opinionated.
Talking about that there is a portion of the voting public that pollsters aren't reaching and that we could see a surprise, a blue wave perhaps.
Do you want to know how desperate the Liberal Party of Canada is right now? There's nothing more telling than this, and also the story we're going to share afterwards. But the fact that there are people who have gone to Poilievre rallies who then see that, according to, whatever pollster, Mark Carney he's going to win the election with 98% of the vote. And people are thinking to themselves, that's kind of weird because there was like thousands of people at that Poilievre rally I went to. There's thousands showing their support online, thousands at other rallies. His videos are getting more views than most of the other candidates. It's just weird. It doesn't really make sense to me. And they're questioning that, which is completely logical and rational and human to do. And the Liberal and the propaganda machine that is the CBC has turned that instead into some sort of see, look, they're just like Trump. Oh, yeah. Remember when Trump said that he didn't trust the vote and that it was a rigged election? And now you've seen that translate into Canadian politics where politicians are being asked these questions even. And it is like, there is nobody who lives rent-free in the Liberals' mind like Donald Trump. And it's do as I say, not as I do. Obviously, they are obsessed with the guy because it is unreal how frequently they are drawing those comparisons. And they do it to try to cast doubt and shame on conservatives, which is laughably insane and so childish to do. And it's infuriating because it's like, holy crap, these are grown adults. Wowza. Okay, there must be fluoride in the water that's affecting their brain cells. I don't, how else do you make sense of that? I'm kidding, maybe. But this one clip happened on CBC. It's a couple days old now, but I cannot even begin to explain to you how angry it made me. But thank goodness we had James Moore to absolutely obliterate their narrative.
Because someone's going to clip this and put it on social media and Cochrane's trying to turn, the Poilievre campaign to Trump stop the steal thing. They're not doing that at all. We don't know if this is just 6 or 7 people. We don't know how big it is, but when you start seeing this pop up in an election, I don't know. I get a little bit worried just in general. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I got to say, if you don't know if it's 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 people, why are we platforming them on the national public broadcaster?
Well, because it is also happening in some of the online publications on the right-wing things.
Sure.
But it does reach an audience of young men in particular, James, and it's how it starts, right? So I was just like, how do we deal with the resiliency of it, right?
Yeah, good save, but I don't think frankly, I don't think it should be platformed. But my message to them would be, instead of, wasting your money on a banner and some hoodies and a ball cap, why don't you actually get involved in the political process? To their question, do you believe in the polls? I don't believe in a poll. I believe in the aggregate of polls, and polls are, all of them, even in the aggregate, are snapshots of a flowing river, and they're no predictor of tomorrow. They're a snapshot of where we might be today when you take the sum of all of them and you look at the mean. But if I assume these people, they want to be politically active. If you want to be politically active, then be politically active. Don't talk about the process. And take that money that you wasted on those hoodies and buy a tank of gas and volunteer for a political party you believe in and drive people to the polls and the advanced polls next weekend. Do something. Don't talk about things. Do something. Participate. Get involved. There's all kinds of ways you can do that. Hammering up signs, knocking on doors, handing out flyers, doing your thing. But whining about the process, even if it's 2 or 3 or 5 people, I mean, they can have a real impact in a local campaign. If they care about their country so much that they're going to stand out in the cold and wave a banner, then do it in a meaningful way.
James, look, and James, I take your point about why platform them, and we struggle with this, right? But like Sherelle, they can find a platform in the internet age and will get platformed. And sometimes if you ignore something because you don't want a platform, it takes root before it's revealed to people, So
now this comes after there were a few people that, of course, the media then sensationalized, and it really just makes you wonder, what are they focusing on right now and why is that their focus? Because there were a few people who said, do you trust the polls? They had like signs and stuff like that read that. And again, as per my last statement, I think it's perfectly rational to wonder, weird that we're seeing such a huge turnout, but the polls are completely opposite. And of course they are, because polls are such unbelievably small sample sizes, and they really only represent the people who actually responded to the poll, right? That's not going to be the entire population. How on earth can a poll that has 800 participants, let's say, some of them do, that are all from like the GTA, that are in their 50s plus, that doesn't represent the entirety of Canada as they claim it does. Like it doesn't. It's a good representation of, okay, great, that's where those people are feeling like they're at. That's obviously not where the whole country is feeling like they're at, right? There's a reason maybe why pollsters have refused to do deep dive polls in Alberta, for example. But the thing about this that made me feel so irate, and if you know anything about my personal life, my story, I've shared it a few times, is the fact that David would go on this tangent about young men. Oh, it's dangerous. That's how it starts. It's going to be platformed online. And again, too, it's like they're literally just questioning the polls. What danger is there in that? Like, honestly, like, oh, okay, so they're talking about the polls and questioning them and encouraging people to vote. What is the rhetoric that is derived from that makes people any harm to society as a whole? And if anything, you platforming that and you being biased while claiming to be unbiased is what's making people not trust institutions. Just going to throw that out there. But it is so unreal to see yet again another disappointing segment that is specifically targeting young conservative men. Sometimes I wonder why it is that the unaliving yourself rates have spiked so high in Canada for men under 30. Could it be possibly, I don't know, because everybody who is so virtuous and compassionate ostracizes them and shames them for having completely normal beliefs and speculations. And instead of just saying, oh yeah, that's kind of a good point, wonder why, you instead try to make them feel as though they don't belong. And it is so unbelievably shameful to me for young men in particular to yet again be vilified for being conservative and spoken about in such a way. And I'm so sick of this type of commentary because the narrative that is created with it matters so much. It really, really does. And, on that note, I really do thank James Moore for calling that out for the ridiculousness that it actually is. And it's funny, actually, the host there said something about Stop the Steal, which was a slogan that was popular in 2020 by President Donald Trump, because it turns out that this past weekend, there was a conservative conference that's held every year. It's CSFN, the Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference. I was supposed to go, and then this election, it just made my life very difficult in terms of scheduling and planning things. So I will be there next year for sure. But this year I had to pull out last minute. And at this conference, there was a number of people who noticed these pins that said things like Stop the Steal on them, which was kind of weird because everybody's like, what the heck is this? Turns out that 2 Liberal Party staffers attended last week's Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference, and they planted these buttons that used Trump-style language and highlighted division within the Conservative Party. Reading more from a CBC article about this, it says the buttons were scattered in the event space in a way to give the impression that they were made and left by people attending the conference. In fact, the idea came from the Liberal War Room. And this story gets very yucky because on Friday night, it says that in 2 Ottawa bars, campaign workers shared how the party was behind this move, how 2 Liberal Party staffers attended the conference intended for Conservatives and placed these buttons in areas where attendees would find them. One of those conversations was in the immediate earshot of this journalist. A Conservative source overheard the other conversation. Says that the Liberal Party did not respond to requests, but also did not deny their campaign's involvement. A CSFN spokesperson says it's unfortunate but not surprising that the Liberals would seek to misrepresent the views of attendees of our conference. These divisive, gimmicky tactics say more about the Liberals than they do of the united and growing Conservative movement. Then it goes on to say that despite their public claims, it's clear that it's the Liberals who are attempting to bring American-style politics into our country. And that's coming from the Conservative Party of Canada spokesperson Sam Lilly. One wonders what other dirty tricks the Liberals are behind as they desperately seek to distract from their disastrous record while seeking a 4th Liberal term.
Large American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm our children. My government will act. And today we're announcing our plan to fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong. A plan to make Canada secure, to make Canada strong.
It was just a few days ago that Mark Carney was talking about how dangerous right-leaning Conservative rhetoric is online with mis and disinformation, right? And oh yeah, they've been talking an awful lot about banning all of those things that are bleeding in from America into Canada. Baby, you are the one who was bleeding into Canada. Gosh darn. Raquel Dancho, who's an MP, she actually said, I never want to hear another Liberal talk about the dangers of disinformation in our politics. This is the textbook definition of disinformation, and planting lies about an opposing party's position can never ever be tolerated. Mark Carney needs to take responsibility for his employees' actions and denounce this crap immediately. But let's be real, Mark Carney's in hiding right now. That's not going to happen.
Prime Minister who leads a Liberal Party that's made up of ministers and caucus members who are responsible for the series of ethical scandals that have tarnished Canadians' confidence in our democratic institutions, like the $60 million Arrive scam, the $1 billion Green Slush Fund, the Canada Student Service Grant, where they tried to give $1 billion to Liberal insiders at the WE organization. Mark Carney doesn't want you to think about any of that. That 87% of the cabinet that he appointed were the same cabinet ministers that advised Justin Trudeau. He's running on one election promise only, that he can deal with Trump. So how's that going? 2 weeks ago, he said that he made progress with Trump. Last week, he said that, quote, he can handle Trump, end quote. That's an actual quote from him. But there's no evidence whatsoever that Mark Carney can control or influence anything that Donald Trump does. The fact is that while the rest of the world is getting pauses on Trump's tariffs, there are more tariffs on Canada today than when Mark Carney became Prime Minister. Now that's Mark Carney's actual record of dealing with Trump. He can't hide from that record any more than he can hide from his own conflicts and Liberal record of broken promises.
Now, before we get into what the Conservatives announced today to stop that and to have accountability and restore trust in our institutions, here is what Danielle Smith had to say about the Liberal government's track record thus far in terms of enhancing our country and doing what's best for Canadians, because they know, right, what's best for us. Yeah, it's totally because it's not only best for them and their ideological takeover of the entire globe.
Everyday working Canadians have had enough of bad policies and bad ideas from Ottawa that only serve to make us weaker and weaker and weaker. Enough with their meaningless, virtue-signaling, extreme climate policies that only serve to make Canadians poorer, threaten our energy security, kill jobs and investment across the country, and make us vulnerable to unpredictable trade winds. These policies are not progressive. They're the very opposite. They're regressive. They take us backward, not forward.
MP Larry Brock just posted this, and while, I mean, who knows, it obviously looks like a legit document, he writes, this document was found in a prison by a correctional officer aimed at turning inmates against conservatives. Are the Liberals really trying to win votes from convicted criminals by attacking conservative crime policies? This after a decade of liberal soft-on-crime laws coddling criminals and unleashing chaos in our communities. And this photo here looks like an actual government document, Government of Canada at the top. It says Conservative Pierre Poilievre policy will ensure all inmates will live in the most severe conditions allowed by law and ensure justice is served to all victims of crime. That sounds pretty great, don't you think? Crime reform proposal goes into Poilievre's recently announced 3-strike law, goes into life sentences on serious offenses, goes into less resources and fundings for all federal prisons. That's kind of misleading, but essentially it's just that inmates in maximum security will wear orange jumpsuits, TVs will be displaced, and their quality of life there may not be as great, because it is kind of weird, isn't it, that, like, I don't know, Paul Bernardo, as an example, is living more lavishly than most Canadians do, but maybe I'm just crazy. It is so bizarre what is happening right now, and it is so disappointing that more people aren't aware of this. And even if they are aware of it, they are so wildly indoctrinated and radicalized that they don't care. What is happening? Like, how is this happening?
With the NDP and the Liberals making their stances known, how will the Conservative government deal with Canada's Israel policy? And what will you do to stop the near-weekly hate marches on Canadian streets?
Thank you. This is a very important question. The rampaging chaos that we see in our streets, the targeting of synagogues and Jewish schools with hate, vandalism, violence, fire bombings of synagogues, these things were unheard of 10 years ago. We've always had debates and disagreements about foreign issues in Canada, but those disagreements did not spill into violence on our streets. People left the violence abroad. That's why they come to this country, is to live in peace and in freedom, so that disagreements can play themselves out in debate, not in fire bombings and physical violence. The Jewish community feels understandably under siege as these hate marches and anti-Semitic outbursts have become an unfortunate part of Canadian life. And frankly, the Liberals have encouraged these divisions. We see what they do. They say one thing to one group and then exactly the opposite to another group. They turn Canadians against Canadians, and they've been doing it for 10 years. And what is the consequence? 251% increase in hate crimes. 251. Now, to be clear, we can't blame all of that on the October 7th attacks, because there was already more than 100% increase in hate crimes before those attacks occurred. This is the direct result of radical liberal policies and divisive rhetoric that has driven our people apart. We will end that. We will bring in tougher laws to target vandalism, hate marches that break laws, violent attacks based on ethnicity and religion. Anyone who's here on a visitor visa who carries out law breaking will be deported from this country, and there will be very serious jail time, and on top of that, fines for anyone who carries out anti-Semitic vandalism or property damage. We need to unite our people. We need to get back to the country we used to have with regards to bringing people together. Used to be that people would come from around the world. They live in peace. They might have different political opinions. They might even squabble about those opinions. But they didn't throw rocks at each other. They didn't firebomb each other's businesses. They didn't break glass. That wasn't how it was in Canada. We need to heal those wounds and bring our people together again so that everyone from every background feels safe. My closing message on this to Canada's Jewish community is you are not alone. You have friends. Canadians stand with you. You have the right to wear your Star of David, your kippah, and have your mezuzah on your door. You should feel proud to be Jewish, and you should never have to hide your Jewishness in order to stay safe. And as your Prime Minister, I will fight for your safety, your security, and your acceptance every single day.
How on earth can anybody actually believe that the Liberal Party of Canada, with even just everything we have uncovered in today's episode, on top of, I don't know, the hundreds of other episodes that we have here on Over Opinionated, how can anybody think that the Liberal Party of Canada is working for them, for their best interest? How?
Until Liberals found loopholes. And we have to give them credit. They're very creative. As much as we tried to stomp out all the Liberal corruption, they went to work to find ways around the rules. So, I'm announcing today that a new Conservative government will bring change by introducing the Accountability Act 2.0, designed to remove the loopholes that Mr. Carney and the Liberals are using to avoid accountability for themselves and for their party. We're going to put Canadians first for a change. We're going to have an accountable government for a change. We're going to have politicians and leaders who work for you, for your affordable home and food, for your safe street, for your paycheck, for a change. So, let me lay out some of the elements of this plan. First, we will ban shadow lobbying. Shadow lobbying is when professional VIPs with big shot titles call themselves advisors so that they can influence government decisions to profit themselves, but then get around lobbying rules. And Mr. Carney's been famous for this. He bragged that he lobbied the British government to increase jet fuel prices while his company invested in the jet fuel. He brags that he influenced governments to subsidize heat pumps while his company invests in heat pumps. He says that he's going to reverse the Liberal housing crisis by having the government build prefab tiny homes. Well, his company is invested in prefab tiny homes. Using a fake title of advisor to push policies that enrich yourself while impoverishing everyone else is an unacceptable conflict of interest, and it is nothing more than glorified corporate lobbying that is unregistered. We have a lobbyist registry which is meant to allow Canadians to know who is taking money to influence government decisions. We cannot allow high-priced corporate insiders like Mark Carney to go around those rules. And so, henceforth, we will eliminate the lobbying loophole and require anyone who's acting as an advisor to government officials to declare themselves and register as a lobbyist whenever they are advising on matters that touch upon their financial interests or that of their company. This would have required Mr. Carney register as a lobbyist when he was talking about anything that would have profited his corporate interests at Brookfield. Second, we will stop politicians from profiting off their own decisions. Ministers should not be involved in setting policies that enrich themselves or their families without accountability. We should not allow people to use their political power in government to make decisions that will advantage themselves above and beyond the public interest. But it's been widely over-interpreted to allow, for example, Bill Morneau to make policies that affect insurance plans just because there are multiple companies that benefit from it and not just his. And so we will put in place a stricter test that will ban politicians, particularly ministers, from any involvement in decisions that would benefit their interests more than the public interest. They would also have to declare these interests publicly and widely so that everyone knows. Third, we'll increase the fines for ethics violations to $10,000. No more slaps on the wrist. 4, tax transparency. anyone running for office will have to disclose where they paid taxes for the last 7 years. In which country? Interestingly, one reporter has contacted Mr. Carney's campaign and said, have you been paying taxes in Canada personally? And his campaign refuses to answer that question. Seems like a pretty basic question. He's the Prime Minister of Canada, and he can't tell a journalist whether he pays taxes in Canada, whether he personally pays the same taxes that he charges everyone else. This is, I've never seen something like this in my life.
I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Tomorrow's show, we're going to be focusing a lot on EV mandates, Doug Ford, and some of the things he is saying that totally break the narrative, as well as CBC going a little unhinged and getting absolutely called out for it. It is quite entertaining, among many other things. Be sure to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Give us a follow elsewhere, depending on where you're watching this. Comment your thoughts down below and like the video, and I will talk to you tomorrow.